Few things. So I will say, with respect to your first question, we believe the war has been a strategic failure for Ukraine. The Secretary spoke to this in a speech he gave in Helsinki last month, I believe it was. What's that? I'm sorry. A strategic failure for Ukraine. Thank you for the correction. Which is I need more than one correction today. A strategic. This is the first time at the podium for a week. I'm apparently a little rusty.
This is my video update from Nicosia, Cyprus, on this Tuesday, July 11th. Let's talk about some news. So the Department of State, they say that the war is a strategic failure for Ukraine. No, you meant Russia. Yes, the war is a strategic failure for Ukraine. I mean Russia. Oh boy, their own lies are tormenting them. They can't keep their story straight anymore. What an epic Freudian slip. Yeah, it is a strategic failure for Ukraine and for the collective West and for NATO and for the Biden White House and for the European Union. For once, we agree. We agree with the State Department. This Project Ukraine thing has been a complete failure for Ukraine and for the entire collective West. So with that being said, I guess we started off with the clown world, but let's now move on to the big story of the day, and that is Erdogan and Sweden and the NATO summit in Vilnius. So I think that I made a prediction 2 days ago when I was in Larnaca. and it looks like that prediction came true. And me and Alexander also talked about this yesterday morning in our video on the Duran channel as well. How about this for a prediction, everyone? Turkey is being put under a tremendous amount of pressure from the US and from NATO. And they've done this now with the Azovstal commanders. How about if during the NATO summit, the big surprise is that Turkey finds a way to work out its problems with Sweden, and during the Vilnius summit, Stoltenberg and Biden, they get up on stage and they announce that Sweden's accession into NATO has been approved by Erdogan and Turkey. We've worked out our problems and we're going to allow Sweden to enter Turkey. How about that for a PR media narrative for NATO? I could see that happening as well. I can definitely see that happening. So
the one thing that might happen, I think people need to be prepared for, is that a complete backflip by Erdogan on Sweden's Turkish NATO membership. I'm not saying he's going to agree to that, but I would certainly not. I would certainly not discount it. If the price is right, the West is prepared to pay the price, he will go for it. He always does.
So Sweden is going to be entering NATO. Erdogan, for his capitulation, let's call it that, to allow Sweden to enter NATO, he is going to be getting, or he's been promised the F-16s, the F-16 parts and the whole F-16 deal that has been going back and forth now with the U.S. for like a year and a half, maybe even more than that. He's been promised by the EU the liberalization of visas. So I imagine that citizens of Turkey will eventually be able to travel throughout the EU visa-free. I think now they do have to apply for a visa if they want to enter the Schengen area or they want to enter EU countries that are not in the Schengen. I could be wrong about that, but I do believe that there has been visa issuance issues to Turkish citizens who want to travel into the EU. So I imagine they're going to create some sort of EU-wide visa liberalization, and Turkish citizens will be able to travel to Europe without the need to apply for a visa, maybe for something like 3 months for every 6 months, 90 days for every 180 days, they'll be able to enter Europe. They'll put something together. And I could be wrong on the exact visa policy that's currently in place throughout the EU with Turkey, but one of the things that Erdogan was promised was some sort of visa liberalization with Turkey. And the renewal of the customs agreement, the customs union agreement that the EU has with Turkey, which essentially means more, the promise of more investment and more trade, which Erdogan desperately needs because the Turkish economy is in a terrible state. And the visa issue, I imagine, is going to play very, very nicely at home in Turkey. I imagine a lot of Turkish citizens are going to be very happy with some sort of visa policy where they can travel throughout Europe without having to apply for a Schengen visa or stuff like that. So that is what Erdogan has been promised. And Jake Sullivan, he actually came out with a quote after this deal was finalized. And let me tell you what Jake Sullivan said. And this is coming from the Twitter account of Zlati71. The issues of Turkey's membership in the EU and Sweden's accession to NATO are not interconnected. Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. NATO is NATO. The EU is the EU. The U.S. is not a member of the EU. The U.S. has previously been in favor of Turkey's negotiation with Europe. For the resumption of these negotiations, President Biden began to deal with this topic long before the question of Sweden's membership in NATO. So as far as we know, these topics are not interconnected. And then Jake Sullivan, he looked at the media as he was making this statement, and he said, "If you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you." Is there any doubt anymore that the European Union and NATO are one and the same? I mean, come on, man. So Erdogan calls up Biden the other day to talk about resuming Turkey's EU accession process. and then he travels to Vilnius and he meets with Stoltenberg and with the Swedish officials and the Turkish officials, and they hammer out a deal to allow Sweden to get into NATO. And for that, he's going to get all of these EU perks and promises. Yeah, the EU and NATO are the same thing. I mean, they're located in Brussels, like across the street from from each other. It's like NATO headquarters are here and the EU headquarters are there. I think they actually share the same cafeteria. Ursula has lunch with Stoltenberg every day. Oh boy. So that's it. That is it. Does this bother Russia? Sweden entering NATO? Nah, not at all. Not at all. Finland, yeah, that irked Russia. But Sweden, I think Russia couldn't care less. I mean, they would prefer Sweden not to be in NATO, but Sweden was already a de facto member of NATO anyway. So this is just formalizing the reality of Sweden's cooperation with NATO over the many years. But Erdogan, he'll reach out to Putin in the next few weeks after all of the NATO Vilnius summit hoopla and hysteria calms down, Erdogan is going to reach out to Putin and he'll start the charm offensive with Putin and with Russia, and they'll find common ground. I'm certain of it. At least in the short term. In the short term, they need each other. Turkey has leverage on Russia. Russia has leverage on Turkey. They'll work it out for the short term. Russia is not going to forget this. I don't think that Russia's going to forget what Turkey has done. But look, this is geopolitics. This is politics, and so right now, both of those countries need each other, and they're going to figure out a way to get past this speed bump, and that's what it is, to be quite honest. And I said in my video yesterday, that was the calculation that Erdogan made. Erdogan said, for me to spoil my relationship with Putin and with Russia, just kind of set it back a little bit, is worth what I'm going to get from the collective West. That was the calculation that Erdogan made. Okay, I take a hit with Russia, but it's nothing that I can't work out in the next month or two. And Putin, I'm sure that Erdogan said, Putin is a rational, reasonable leader. I can talk with him, and I'll figure a way to get back into Russia's good graces. But for now, Erdogan said, I need to get the F-16 stuff. I need to get the visa stuff. I need to get investment into Turkey. The economy is a complete mess. I believe that Erdogan hired a new finance minister who's this Wall Street banker guy, very popular. From what I understand, he's very popular in Turkey, especially among the business community. I forgot his name, but yeah, Erdogan needs to solve these problems. And while he may be looking at BRICS and the SCO in the medium and long term, he probably said, in the short term, I need to shore things up a bit. So that's probably what happened. And who knows what threats the U.S. was making towards Turkey as well. We don't know what the Biden White House was holding over Erdogan's head either. And at the end of the day, this is Erdogan being Erdogan. He enjoys this stuff. This is in his nature. It's in his nature to play both sides. That's what he likes to do. That's what he feels he does best. So for NATO, this was a PR win. For NATO Incorporated, this was a big media PR win. And look, the media and the PR stuff is the most important thing for the collective West, for the U.S. and for NATO. I mean, the PR media stuff is just below the power and the money. After the power and the money, the second most important priority for the collective West is the PR media optics. It's even more important than the actual reality of the conflict on the ground. That's how important the media and PR information war optics are for the collective West. So this was a huge gift from Erdogan to NATO and to the collective West, because NATO is a business that is failing. NATO Incorporated, it is a business that is failing because NATO relies on expansion and conflict. And it's losing the conflict in Ukraine. That's bad. That's one part of its business model, the conflict. It's getting demolished in Ukraine. And so it has to rely on its other revenue model, which is expansion. And outside of Ukraine, it can't really expand much further, at least in Europe. So it got Finland, it got Sweden. Who's next? Moldova? After Moldova, you don't really have any other countries. Okay, they're gonna put pressure on Serbia and work on Serbia, but that's gonna be a tough one for NATO to crack. So Sweden, Finland. Next up is Moldova. After that, you're done. You've been stopped at Ukraine. because Ukraine for NATO was going to be a big expansion. If they could have gotten into Ukraine, and think about it, it would have opened up all of the Caucasus and Eurasia. It would have opened up Georgia and Armenia and Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan. I mean, it would have opened everything up for NATO. But they've been stopped at Ukraine. So the conflict is going really bad for them. The expansion is all they got, and that's coming to an end with Moldova. And then they're going to look at NATO Pacific. You know, what does a business do when it's already expanded as much as it can in its immediate vicinity? It goes elsewhere. It franchises, right? It opens up a subsidiary, and that's what they're going to probably do. NATO Japan, to keep NATO Inc. in business. So the whole Erdogan thing is clearing up. I think it's starting to clear up as to Erdogan's motivation. There's still some more question marks left, but I think those will be answered come the expiration of the grain deal, which is going to take place on July 17th. We'll see if Russia renews the grain deal. We have some question marks as far as Syria is concerned and how the Russian military is absolutely pounding Turkish-backed forces in Syria. Erdogan wants a meeting with Assad. Assad is saying no meeting with Turkey until Turkey leaves Syria. So there still are some question marks. And of course, Erdogan eventually, in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, he is going to call Putin, and he is going to try to arrange some sort of meeting. And I think then we'll have a clearer picture as to the exact motivations of Erdogan with this entire story arc, from the commandos all the way to the NATO Vilnius summit. But I think it's pretty clear now what Erdogan was doing and what he is doing. So it was really about the Vilnius summit, everything that happened over the past couple of days. The commandos and now Sweden into NATO and all of these things are focused on the Vilnius summit. And for Russia, you know, this is not going to be of much concern for Russia. As the Vilnius summit is taking place, it's starting today. As it's taking place, Russia continues to demolish the NATO proxy army in Ukraine, and that's what it is. The proxy war in Ukraine. Russia continues to demolish the Ukraine military in what has been a failed, catastrophic counter-offensive. Now, this is some game. I don't know what game this is, but it's something, because all the squares are numbered. Anyway, so the plan for NATO. What was the plan for NATO over the past couple of weeks as they were heading into this Vilnius summit? So plan A was, over the past, let's say, 3 months, the big plan was the big counteroffensive. NATO was hoping that the counteroffensive was going to be a success, that the Ukraine military would reach the Sea of Azov, reach the borders of Crimea, and as Zelensky told ABC the other day, they would move their artillery and their HIMARS and everything to the borders of Crimea, and they would threaten Putin with the annihilation of Crimea if he would not capitulate. And that was the plan. And they were hoping that that was going to be the reality. And I'm sure Zelensky was imagining himself riding into Vilnius on a white horse with a wreath on his head, and he was going to be hailed as the Emperor King of Europe with Ursula and Annalena Baerbock, Kaja Kallas, Justin Trudeau looking up at Zelensky as he's riding his horse through the city streets of Vilnius and just saying, "Oh my God, he's He's so dreamy. He's so cool. He's a hero, Alensky. And Alensky would be riding into Vilnius as the savior of Europe and NATO and the collective West. Yes, I am savior. I am king of Europe. I bring freedom and democracy to all of Europe because I defeat Putin. That is right. Freedom, democracy. And anyone who disagrees with me, I put in prison. So, I mean, that was probably what was going through the clown puppet actor comedian's mind as they were talking about the big counteroffensive. Anyway, that's been squashed. That is over. That is done with. The counteroffensive is a catastrophic failure. The Ukraine military now is trying to do something in Bakhmut. Zaporozhye, they've been annihilated there, though there is still activity in the direction of Robatino. But they haven't been able to reach the first line of Russian defenses. Bakhmut, you have Syrsky and the deputy Ukraine defense minister, Anya Malyar. They're saying that Bakhmut is now encircled. These guys, I can't believe they're going back to Bakhmut. Come on, man. Really? You guys want to go back to that? Have you not lost enough soldiers? Was it not punishing enough that they're now going back to Bakhmut? Or they're trying to go back to Bakhmut? And you know the Russian military's like, this is... They're scratching their heads probably. They're probably like, this is nuts. They probably can't believe their fortune because the Russians wanted to keep Bakhmut open. I mean, we now know through the entire Wagner incident that the Russian military would have preferred Wagner not to have taken all of Bakhmut, and they would have preferred Wagner to remain what the Russians called a meat grinder. They would have preferred that situation. But Prigozhin, he decided to take all of the city, and okay, well, the rest is history. We know that story. But now Ukraine is going back because Syrsky is obsessed with Bakhmut because he has a history with Bakhmut, Syrsky, and so he's trying to move forward in Bakhmut. And the propaganda from Ukraine is that Ukraine has encircled Bakhmut. Or what did Anya Malyar say, the deputy defense minister? She said that Ukraine now has the high ground. The Russians are just like, this is just all right, guys, come on, come towards us. Let's do this again. And you have pro-Ukrainian like Telegram channels and Twitter channels celebrating this. What are you guys celebrating? What are you guys celebrating? This is madness. Anyway, the counteroffensive, Plan A, huge failure. So what was Plan B before the NATO Vilnius summit? The ZNPP, the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, creating some sort of false flag at the ZNPP, blaming Russia for it, and getting NATO involved in the conflict in Ukraine. That did not pan out. That did not work out. What was Plan C? Plan C was hitting the Kerch Bridge. Again, trying to hit the Kerch Bridge and destroy it. They did it the first time. Russians fixed it up fairly quickly, and they wanted to hit it again. So they wanted to hit a symbol of Crimea before they went to Vilnius, before the Zelensky regime traveled to Vilnius. That didn't work out. In my video yesterday, I said most likely it was Storm Shadow missiles. That's a mistake. We now know that what Ukraine used to try and hit the Kerch Bridge was S-200 missiles, modified S-200 missiles. So that's what they tried to hit the Kerch Bridge with. Anyway, that was repelled and that failed. And so you get to plan, where am I? A, B, C, Plan D, which is Turkey and Erdogan. There you have it. Erdogan to the rescue. You free up the commandos. You release the commandos who will, if they're dumb, they will go back to the front lines. Russia will annihilate them. If they're smart, they'll make a beeline to the United States. But you release the commandos. Heroes welcome in Lviv. go to Vilnius, get Sweden into NATO, make some sort of deal with the EU, and there you have it. That's your plan D. And then you have your plan E, which will be announced today and tomorrow, which will be some sort of security guarantees for Ukraine. The U.S. will sign some Israel-like security guarantees with Zelensky. The U.K. will sign bilateral security guarantees. Poland will sign security guarantees, and on and on and on. And a whole bunch of NATO countries are going to sign bilateral security guarantees with Zelensky, and they'll be sitting at a big table, and they'll sign these documents, and they'll shake each other's hands, and everyone will take photos, and that'll be the big victory. But these security guarantees, these are not going to be binding treaties. There's not going to be any of that stuff. It's just basically putting down on paper what the collective West has been doing for the past year and a half, which is giving Zelensky weapons and money. That's all it is. It's not going to be some enforceable treaty which states that Poland has to absolutely fight for Ukraine or with Ukraine if something happens. That's not what these security guarantees are going to be. What they're going to say is that Poland, we want X amount of money and X amount of weapons from you every 3 months or 6 months or every month. And do you agree? And Poland's going to say, yeah, sure, because whatever money and weapons we send to you in Ukraine, we know is going to come back around and into our politicians' pockets. So they're obviously not going to be upset with these types of security guarantees because everybody is getting rich off of this. And if you have any doubts that what is driving this conflict in Ukraine is money, well, just understand that even the Biden White House, they came out with a statement yesterday, and they said that they are against some Republican congressional initiatives to audit all the money and weapons that are going to Ukraine, to put like a special auditor in place so that they can start tracking all the hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to Ukraine and disappearing. And the Biden White House, I think this was an initiative from like Rand Paul and Matt Gaetz and all of these guys, Marjorie Taylor Greene, all these Republicans, America First, you could say Republicans, J.D. Vance, who are saying, wait a minute, we've sent 150, 250, 350 billion to Ukraine and it's disappeared. Where is this money gone? All we're seeing are images of burnt out Leopards and Bradleys and howitzers, and there's no more ammunition left. I'll get to that in a bit. So where's all this money going? And Zelensky is buying homes in every city in the world. That's my my shtick. But yeah, so they're like, let's get an auditor. Let's appoint someone to audit all of this. And the Biden White House is like, no. We don't want an auditor. No way. Right? Of course they don't. So yeah, this is what's driving this is money. What's driving this is Biden's re-election in 2024. The Democrat Party worried about an Afghanistan-like collapse, keeping NATO in business. Right? That's what's driving this conflict. And they're going to fight it until the last Ukrainian, unfortunately. What NATO should be doing at this meeting in Vilnius, I'll tell you what NATO should be doing. They should be drawing up the surrender papers. No joke. No joke. That is what all of the NATO members should be doing over the next day. Drawing up the paper, the treaty of surrender and capitulation. Because they are running out of ammunition. And Biden even admitted it the other day in his interview with CNN, where I mentioned it in my video 3-4 days ago. Alexander mentioned it on his channel in his video. And on the Duran, we talked about it. And the main takeaway from that interview with CNN was not so much the talk about the cluster munitions, as bad as a look that was for the United States. The main takeaway from Biden's interview with Fareed Zakaria which I noted in my video, was the fact that Biden said that the U.S. is out of 155 millimeter ammunition, which is the foundation of this artillery war. The U.S. is out, and that's why they had to give cluster munitions to Ukraine to act as a type of stopgap as they try to get some production, to ramp up production for the 155 mm. And the New York Post actually read an article, and they're saying that Biden pretty much gave the game away. Like this was a national security, this was like a national security issue, the state of the U.S.'s military and its stockpiles. And Biden admitted to the world that the U.S. is out of weapons. The United States of America is out of 155 mm ammunition. That is amazing. That is amazing. And Biden blurted it out during this interview. So let's do a couple more stories and we'll wrap this video up. How am I doing on time here? Ooh, yeah, I'm gonna have to wrap this one up. So let's try to move quickly. Let's try to move through these stories quickly here. Mark Rutte, he announced that he is out of politics. Am I getting that correct? Did I hear that correctly? Mark Rutte has announced that he's done with politics. He's not going to try and run for elections to try and lead his party to a victory when new elections in Netherlands takes place. Wow, that is huge. But, Mark Rutte, don't let the door hit you on the way out. I'm sure he's waiting for a very juicy appointment to some globalist institution, the Hague or the WEF or the World Bank or something. So I imagine he's holding out and he's expecting a very, very nice payday after all of the work that he has put in for the globalists. Reuters, they ran a story talking about how countries around the world are repatriating their gold out of the collective West. As we have predicted on this channel and on the Duran channel, the rest of the world that has their gold with the collective West, for example, Venezuela and its gold in London, which London has stolen. Anyway, they are seeing all of these things. They're seeing how the collective West is stealing assets and stealing foreign currency reserves and stealing gold. And it looks like all the countries that do have their gold in the collective West for safekeeping, they're pulling it out and they're bringing it back home. This is a huge, huge deal, but expected, because trust in the collective West, trust in the financial architecture of the collective West has been shattered. And Reuters says the main reason that countries are taking back their gold is because they got freaked out by the Russian sanctions. It freaked them out. We've been saying this for about a year and a half now, that countries are going to look on and see what the collective West is doing to Russia, and they're going to say, you know what? Today they're doing it to Russia. Tomorrow they're going to come after me. And it's not only going to be countries, it's going to be very high net worth individuals, princes, oligarchs, businesses. They're going to see what the collective West is doing to Russia, and they're going to say, I got to pull out. And where are they going to put all of these assets and this money and this gold? Well, they're either going to bring it home or they're going to move it to the multipolar system, which is a system that is working on building financial trust with its partners. So this is a huge L for the collective West. And Reuters kind of put the story out there, and I think now everyone understands the severity of the failure that was the Russian sanctions. What a failure the Russian sanctions were. What else here? Let's see. Rheinmetall, the German MIC company, the CEO gave an interview to CNN and said that they are indeed going to have a tank factory up and running in Ukraine in the next couple of months. And he actually said that he's not worried about Russia destroying this tank factory. The CEO said that there are a lot of factories in Ukraine that Russia hasn't destroyed. So why would they destroy ours? Yeah, just wait. Just wait. Russia hasn't destroyed those factories yet because they decided not to destroy those factories. So this factory is going to be located in the west of Ukraine. If Russia wants to destroy it, they will destroy it. The only reason that Russia hasn't destroyed a lot of these factories or bridges or decision-making centers is because as the war started, Russia and the United States, they made some sort of back-channel agreement that they would manage this conflict and that this conflict would not spill over to involve other countries and fighters for the collective West and factories of the collective West and stuff like that. They tried to manage this conflict, but the Russians kept their word, and they didn't destroy the factories and decision-making centers where NATO commanders were and stuff like that. But the collective West did not keep their word, and they launched attacks into Russia, and they provoked Russia by hitting the Kerch Bridge or attacking Belgorod. Escalating with sanctions and all of these things, and flooding Ukraine with mercenaries, and delivering long-range missiles and HIMARS and Storm Shadows. And so Russia, slowly, step by step, Russia decided to start hitting the command centers and the factories and stuff like that. And so, this tank factory, unless Germany can call up Putin, unless Schultz can call up Putin and come to some sort of an agreement that Russia should allow this tank factory to exist, and in exchange, Germany will, I don't even know what Germany can offer Russia. I don't know. To be honest, Germany has nothing to offer Russia, but it would need some sort of an agreement for between Germany and Russia to actually allow this tank factory to operate. But the CEO, he's living in fantasy land if he believes that that factory is going to be allowed to operate in Ukraine. He probably doesn't care, though, because the budget is going to be earmarked and put in place, so Rheinmetall will get the payday, whether they have a factory in Ukraine or not. And finally, Australia is sending E-7A wedge-tail planes to Ukraine. Now, the interesting part about these planes is that their sole purpose is to monitor, surveil, and protect cargo that is moving into Ukraine. And the reason that these planes are being sent to Ukraine is because the collective West is out of weapons. And so, any and every weapon delivery they make to Ukraine going forward is absolutely precious now for the collective West. And they have to make absolutely certain that those weapons do not get destroyed on the way to the front lines. So that's why Australia is pitching in with this wedge-tail plane, this E-7A wedge-tail plane. And finally, let's do a really quick update on Wagner and the story about Putin meeting with the 35 commanders, including Prigozhin, of Wagner on June 29th. This story was revealed by a French publication. Peskov the other day, he confirmed this meeting. And Alexander talks about this in his video update from yesterday. My thoughts on this is yeah, I absolutely would say this was expected. I mean, I would say that if Putin is a good manager and a good leader, he would absolutely want to sit down with all the commanders, 35 commanders, and get their take on things, including Prigozhin. Absolutely. And I think the conclusion to this meeting is that Putin offered these commanders some sort of pathway to the Russian military. it looks like Russia is going to be setting up some sort of new PMC, some sort of Wagner rebranded, and perhaps the commanders will take part in this new entity. And the commanders, they all pretty much pledge their allegiance to Putin and to Russia. So it was a win for Putin, this meeting. A clear victory for Putin and for the Russian government. And this meeting kind of makes sense. And from what I understand, the commanders don't want to go to Belarus. They don't want to be exiled in Belarus. They want to fight for Russia. They want to be involved in some sort of operations for Russia. Maybe they're going to be involved in operations that Russia has in Syria, maybe in Africa, maybe in the conflict in Ukraine. But I expected this. I would say that this is not a surprise that Putin met with these commanders. So that's my thoughts on the meeting with Wagner. And finally, let's do a clown world. And I have two clown worlds for today. The first clown world is Joe Biden's trip to the UK, where he met with King Charles and he broke protocol and he was walking in front of Prince Charles. I'm sure you've all seen the videos by now. The big question is whether Biden was walking in front of Prince Charles because he wanted to send a message, King Charles, because he wanted to send a message to the king, to the UK. I'm the man, I'm Biden, and I rule over you guys, so I'm not going to walk next to or behind the king. I'm going to walk in front of the king because, Biden does have these strange perceptions of himself. Probably rightly so, because he's the most protected president in all of history. But the other theory is that Biden is just losing his mind and he has no idea what's going on. So whether he's walking in front of the king or in back of the king or next to the king or walking in a whole different park, Biden has no clue what is happening to him. So that was the first clown world, and the final clown world to wrap up this video, which has been a long video. I need to wrap this up quickly. Is a German official who spoke before the NATO Vilnius summit, Mr. Kolatz. This is what he said, and I quote, "There are no German weapons in Ukraine. There are Ukrainian weapons of German origin, and those are completely different circumstances." The Annalena Baerbock school of weapon ownership. These are not German leopards that are getting destroyed. These are Ukrainian leopards that are getting destroyed. Anyway, that's the video, guys, at Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Rockfin, and Telegram. And go to Duran Shop, 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.